All right. Good morning.
Hello, where are
Well,
you right now?
I am in Maine, and what you can't see behind me is a really lovely lake, and I'm here for a few days, spending some time with family. So got here yesterday, and should be here for few more days.
Fun?
Oh yes, the weather is fabulous this morning.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Are
How
there
are you?
activities to do?
What's that?
Are there activities to do? Like
Uh,
boats and things?
There are some kayaks. We did a little bit of fishing yesterday.
Fun?
It is small town. We're not really here for a whole lot of activity, more for hanging out at the lake house. And I'm actually sitting by a fire pit right now, so we're going to be doing some s'mores, I'm sure.
Fun.
And, yeah, so it's really nice to be here. But before we get too into that, so for anybody tuning in with us today, this is Coffee Chat. I'm Rachel Friedman, and normally I'm coming from Washington, D.C., and I'm here with Tara Morgan. And
No.
Tara is over in Vashon Island, Washington, and we are the co founders of Steady State Network. And we get together every Friday to talk about rowing, coaching, coxing, culture, and rowing life. And we like to think of this as our virtual version of a post practice hangout with teammates. So if you're here with us, let us know where you're from and how your rowing week is going.
Yeah.
So, how is your week going, Tara?
Rowing week is going good because Learn to Row starts tomorrow.
Exciting.
Time to make the rowers.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
how many folks do you have signed up?
8.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. That's good for Vashon. That's a good number.
Yeah,
and it's good considering I'm having to teach sculling. So they get oh, your mom's here.
Yeah, mom's here.
That's a good number. I used to teach sweep, Learn to Row exclusively, and then dabble in sculling. But now I have to teach all sculling because there is no sweep program. So so it should be fun. They're all wide-eyed, think they know what rowing is. So,
So day one, what does day one of a Learn to Row look like for you?
For me, it's a lot of like hugs and high fives, and you made it this far.
Yeah.
And then it's intros. I always ask the question, why rowing? Why now?
That's a great question.
Because a lot of times people are like, I just went through a divorce and I need some me time, or my kid went off to college and it's time for me again, or I just moved here and I want to make friends, or, something like along those lines, which is awesome. And then I do a tour of the boathouse and I do fun, like pop quizzes on what's sweep, what's sculling, what's port, what's starboard, let's bow stern. I do like that kind of thing. Introduce basic language. And then I do an erg demo, and we have volunteers that just sit alongside and just kind of erg.
Yeah.
And then we mock carry a boat.
Okay. So without the boat, but going through the motions?
Down to, because what we do is we take it out of the bay, down a ramp, and then put it on slings, seats up, prep the boat, flip it back over, carry it to the water because we have a water launch.
Yep.
So that's our sequence. So we take them through that whole sequence. Most likely it'll be all 8 people carrying a quad.
Yeah. Might as well. Yeah.
And then if we have time, I'll take them with the boat down to the water with oars and get them in. They won't go anywhere, but they'll get in. That's a lot of it, boat handling. Like, that's the scary stuff. Once you're in the boat, that's different.
We'll see. That can be the really scary bit for a lot of people, getting situated into a small boat, figuring out how tippy it is, not being afraid of it being tippy.
But I've found that adults like to have this kind of buffer in their learning experience. And so the buffer for me, what I've found really works is you get them really familiar with like repetition and language, so they don't have to worry about all those other things. So they're not arriving at the water super stressed out, not understanding how to carry a boat, not understanding commands, and not understanding right from left. If they can get that solid on the first day, bring it into practice the second day, that's 50 more things they don't have to think about.
Yeah.
So then they can just, okay, we're going to hyper speed everything we did last week, and we're going to go right into the water, and then they'll go row. So.
Yeah. I think one really interesting thing about learning to row, and maybe it's the same with other sports as well, like everything has its own language associated with it. But, with rowing, we're asking folks to learn this skill that's so different than anything else we do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And we're asking them to learn really a whole new language and understand it, comprehend it, and sometimes be able to like get it back out, especially as coxswains, which you won't be having with quads.
Right.
But I've become. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, but I was just thinking to say there's all that, but then you add the enormous amount of stress that people feel when they take learn to row because there are other people involved.
Yes.
So not only are they so a lot of times when people learn, they're like, okay, I'm in my bubble, I get it or I don't get it, or I'm confused or I'm not confused. We're just like pushing them like a tsunami, like here, now get in a boat with 3 other people.
That's true.
And then, so I do a lot of like hugs, like I got you. A lot of checking in, a lot of like, and I also always say like, no one's born learning how to row. Like that's not like running or hitting something or kicking something. This is a very complicated task. So,
yeah,
but it's worth it.
Yeah. Right? This year I've come, this is not for the first time, but it's definitely on my mind right now. I've come up, I'm working with some newer, not brand new, but newer rowers who their English is not their first language. Oh. And so not only are they kind of learning all the language associated with rowing, but you can tell they're like processing it, trying to crank it back out. And I've just learned to take a little bit more time when I'm talking with them, because I know that they're really working on processing what I'm saying to them and learning this new language of rowing. And so and I let them know, I'm like, I know that you're learning a new language, so let's work on this together,
Yeah. I learned a trick from the foster adopt world one time that I've used a lot in Learn to Row. And it was this trick of renaming a child, right? Because you want to rename a child, right? But you want to do it in a way like you're the new adoptive parent, and you don't want, for privacy reasons or just whatever reason, you're renaming the child, and the child's like 2, Mm-hmm. And what they do is the kids, like this kid's name was Sherelle in the foster care system. And so they wanted to call her Olivia. And so they started calling her Olivia Sherelle, Olivia Sherelle, Olivia Sherelle. And then they dropped the Sherelle.
Yeah.
So what I do is I do right hand port, left hand port, starboard, left hand starboard. And then I usually just drop the right or left hand because they start to hear right hand port, even if I don't say right hand, because they're so used to the way that I do it.
Yeah.
In their minds, they have to switch,
Yeah, that's smart. So I was just like, my brain was then processing for a second, because just yesterday I was talking to my dad, my parents. I was talking to my parents about port starboard and like how confused I got moving from rowing to learning how to sail, and going that way backwards in a sweep boat to basically flipping around as a sailor, right? Starboard and port are still on the same side of the boat, but as a person in the vessel, I was looking the opposite direction. So while you were saying right hand port, I was like, that's not right, but it's totally right. I'm thinking as a coxswain.
I find it really interesting when I do Learn to Row the first day. I ask people who knows what port, starboard, bow, stern mean. And I'm always surprised at how many people have an understanding of port, starboard, bow, stern. And I'm like, well, good news. You get to flip it around and go backwards.
Yeah.
And they'd kind of go, yeah. But I always say bow ball, like there's a ball at the end of the bow. So
that's true. That's true. Other things for people to think about. Yeah. So I think I told you, I don't remember. I think I'm going to be coaching a learn to row. I know I'm going to be
Yeah,
coaching.
you did tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Starting in August. I got a couple. It's going to be really jam packed, like a boot camp, 6 sessions in 2 weekends. And the idea is to get this last group of learn to rowers in this summer, and then joining our novice team for the rest of the year. So I'm really excited about it. I had the chance to coach some novices a couple days ago, not a couple days, like last week, for the first time in a while, and just really, it really reignited my passion for coaching novices. I think I'd lost it for a while, and I wasn't sure I wanted to get back into it, but it was so much fun. It was so much fun.
Like, so cute. Yeah.
They're cute, and like I kind of like that level. Like everything is fresh, everything's exciting. They know that they need to know some things, but they don't need to know 18 million things. So we can kind of keep practices simple, which I like.
Yeah. And they make such huge gains in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
That when you play that back to them and you say, look what you did, today, like, yeah, they feel really successful.
They can see progress, hopefully, from the start of practice through the end of a practice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Tara, I'm thinking about, since we're talking about Learn to Row, I'm thinking about the kind of bonus special summer podcast episode we're about to drop today and tomorrow. Today to our patrons, tomorrow to everybody else.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that because you told this story about several years ago being kind of at the helm of a Learn to Row and at a club, and an unfortunate accident that happened with a boat of folks that headed out. And so if you guys want to hear that story, tune into our podcast. You're going to find it online to the public tomorrow. And we hope that you like this episode. It's definitely different than what we normally do.
Yeah, it's shorter. It's more of a storytelling hour between Rachel and I. And we actually didn't intend to record it, but we did, fortunately. And it's just kind of funny stories. And we hope that you can relate to a lot of what we're talking about, because there's some fun stuff that happens out there on the water. And we're going to do more of that sort of banter rambling, I think, because both of us have such unique experiences where we row and what we're doing in the rowing world. So yeah, it's going to be good.
I don't know if I told you, but I was out a couple of weeks ago. I went to a happy hour that was hosted by Capital Rowing Club, which is our neighbor in the boathouse. And some other folks from DC Strokes went as well. And I sat down and started chatting with this young guy at the table who, if I had to guess, is maybe 3 years out of college. He moved to DC a year ago. And I'm definitely at this point now where I'm like, oh my God, I've been rowing almost as long as this guy has been alive.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out how to have those sorts of conversations without sounding like the old lady, oh, I remember when.
Yeah, but they've all had those conversations with us, all those people.
Yeah. So, or not to come across as like, oh, here's all this stuff. Like, I want to dump on you. Like, here's all this information that I have. And I think I'm thinking about that as well with some of our newer rowers, like reining it in and saying, like, here's what's important at this moment, especially as a coach. Like, there's all this stuff that you're going to have all season to learn. Like, I don't need to tell it all to you on day one. And that's what I'm trying to do with like socializing right now with new rowers.
Yeah. That happened. There's a coach at Pocock. I won't say who it is, but they're the doomsday learn to row coach. Now, everybody's had this doomsday learns to row coach where they think that they're being funny, right? They think they're using sarcasm or wit or something to either they're nervous or they're insecure or something's not going right. But what they do is they drop a lot of sarcastic comments about how hard rowing is, or, oh, this is the least of your worries, or just wait, that kind of language. I've always tried to avoid that type of mentality. I think any coach really should never be like that. You should always be curious, and you should always never assume a position of power, more a position of credibility and trustworthiness, and approachability, not a position of power. That's the old school coaching.
Yeah.
For sure. You could very easily be like, oh, well, just wait until blah, 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 until you race. It's like, well, why don't you propose racing in a more fun way? Like,
yes. Yeah.
Just wait till you want to die and you can't row anymore because you're in an 8, like all that.
Oh,
like,
God. I had a coach for one season. He was awful. And what he thought was motivational was, I remember him specifically on multiple occasions saying things like, I want you to work so hard that you break your wrists, or things like that. And I just didn't really know where he was coming from. Like, it didn't make any sense. It wasn't motivational to me. He's a real dude.
Yeah.
Real bro.
Well, I think sometimes coaches pick up on the energy of the strongest energy in the group, and they think that's the energy of the group, right? They pick up on, like, one of my favorite Learn to Row students are the people, well, rower parents are a really fun bunch, right? Rower parents are awesome. But the other fun bunch are former professional athletes or former, like, elite athletes from another sport.
Yeah.
Or people who fancy themselves to be, elite athletes in another sport. Those are the people who think they can absolutely learn any sport, any skill. They're just, this is going to be easy. They did it on a bet, something like that. The fun story I always tell is about the woman who came in and she's like a pro cyclist, and she comes in and she's like, I got a C2 in my basement. I'm like, C2 in my basement. And she says she didn't understand why we were doing like 16, 18, 20, 22 strokes a minute on the erg. And I'm like, because that's what moves boats. Like, it's a pacing exercise, whatever. I'm like, how fast do you go on your erg? And she was like 34.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we're taking that erg back. Like, that erg needs to be liberated from your basement.
Yeah. That is interesting. Yeah. I remember one year, now a friend of mine, but she was a new rower at the time. We sat down. We're doing winter training, and I said, okay, we're going to sit down. We're doing 5Ks today on the erg. And she ripped at it the whole time at like a 32, 34, which maybe that's what a lot of people do, but it wasn't really my intention for the day. And she's like, yeah, I do this all the time, like multiple times a week, sit down, pull a 5K at a 34. And it's what works for her. Yeah, it worked for her, but not something that I personally do. But anyway.
Yeah, well, at least she's moving her body.
So absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else is happening in the world? You and I haven't really checked in this week because I've been traveling.
Well, we have a couple of episodes booked in the books to do. We're pretty excited about that. We've got 2 of our 3 next guests booked. Some cool folks, like a rowing national team member, an entrepreneur in the rowing world, and then just cool people. So they're coming up. And then we're also looking ahead at maybe the Charles, and maybe what racing we can do this fall. And yeah.
Yeah,
so
ahead of the Charles, man, that's sneaking up on us ahead of the Charles.
Well, the lottery's open, I think, or about to be open. We got an email from our club yesterday about putting in for the women's 8.
Oh, okay. Oh, you guys going to do it?
I'm sorry, but we should have started rowing in January. Like, really, that is going to be one of the most painful things. But the thing about Vashon, here's the thing, folks. I prefer a crew that trains year round for the Charles. Right? And everything else is, it is involved in that. That's the Super Bowl, right? Not a team like this one that literally will decide maybe 2 months before we go that we're going to do it. Practice, maybe a couple times a week until we get there. And then when you get there, it's like this. Yeah. And it's the hardest thing you'll ever do because you're just not ready for it. Like, there's a confidence and a quiet that goes along with, and the trust that's built among the boat members, of having done this event together, that's not built in 2 months with 2 practices a week. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, you can row the course, right? You know that you could get in a boat and row down the course, and it would probably be a decent row. But there's something super, like something else that comes along with being ahead of the Charles. First of all, just how big it is and how many other boats are in your event. And then all of a sudden you start realizing you've got to deal with that traffic, right? Are you getting
Right.
past? Are you passing?
Right. And everyone else has trained wildly more than you.
Yeah.
And you know that. And
Yeah.
you just spent, $2,000 to go to the Charles. And, God knows what plane tickets will cost by that point. By the time we decide to go, only the richest people in the club will be able to pull it off, because,
yeah.
I mean, it's really an elite event. It's not the best rowers that get to go to the Charles. It's the people who can leave work and the people who can afford to do that. My old team, they used to stay at the fanciest hotel. They used to go to this fancy Italian restaurant called Amelia's. That was it was locked. The tradition was locked, but they were also luxury real estate agents, and so it was a really exclusive event. Like, it wasn't about the best rowers going. It was like, oh, well, you signed up, so you can go if you can afford it.
Yeah. Tara, seriously, this opens up a whole other conversation, because this is the fact of the matter across the board all year round. Just even how much do you pay for your club dues, right? How much do you pay for club dues? Not everybody can do that. And then can you afford to go away for a weekend for any regatta? Nonetheless, nationals or head of the Charles. Someone that you and I know is a Sculler, is traveling a lot this year. She's made it very clear that this is her year for getting away and sculling. And I've been following her on social media, and it's like every day she's somewhere different, it seems. And you can only make it happen if you've got the funds to do it. Which is something you and I have talked about in terms of helping young coaches get out and about. And we're kind of working on plans right now to help young coaches get their butts into coaching launches with big muckety muck coaches, to do like ride-alongs. And maybe if we can give them, per diems, we being Steady State Network, can give that sort of a scholarship to get young coaches and coaches launches so that they can learn on the water with coaches. I think that'd be amazing. So hopefully we're going to make that happen sooner rather than later.
I think it's really fun. I mean, the idea of a ride-along scholarship is so cool. And here's the thing, if someone came into a ride-along with me, I would feel obligated to have prepared something. I would feel as a coach. So that's a lot to ask of a coach. And you also don't want to be an asshole, be a coach who's just like, you just watch, I'll answer questions at the end or whatever. So you feel sort of obligated. Is there a team captain maybe on the team that can be the liaison between this whole experience? Because what about after practice? Maybe that ride-along coach wants to go for coffee with everybody. And then what? And they just hang out at the boathouse all day, So there's probably some nuances there. But I like the idea of them going to like a 9th Seat camp or a Craftsbury or Calm Waters or an All-American Row Camp. And really, or an ODP, even an ODP camp would be amazing.
Yeah, Olympic development camp. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I would love, long time ago, I think I talked with you about kind of a big daydream of mine, which is to travel around, take a bunch of time to travel across the country in an RV and just visit as many boathouses as I can. And I think when I first started thinking about this notion, it was to get to boathouses to row and to write. I wanted to be able to stop at boathouses, learn about the folks there, learn about the clubs, and then write about them for Row Source. But as we're talking now, I'm like, this would be amazing to do as a coach as well. Just get in launches and learn from coaches and see what coaches are up to wherever they are.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've also fantasized about coming in because my style of teaching Learn to Row is really different. It's really unique to some clubs. Some clubs still take it like a really hard and serious and all of this stuff. I'm sure that's not the case anymore, but back in the day, it was not normal to actually have fun with Learn to Row. It was really let's get them, through the thing. And I got asked to do a Learn to Row clinic
Yeah, exactly. I think, and that's, you're totally right. When it's a 1-day clinic and it's like not just a learn to row, but what's the what did that coach call it that we talked to in Canada? Was it not a learn to row, but a like come and try it?
Well, come and try it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what the Canadians call it.
yeah, come and try it, which I love as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love that. But what a fun idea. Like if Steady State traveled to your club, you know, and we're just going to do a half day clinic on, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll make it our tech talk circuit or something.
Yeah. We'll add it to the list. We've got a big list of things we want to do. We'll add that one to the list. But I wanted to say, so Rachel Lucas over on Facebook mentioned, we were talking about how elite the sport is and whether or not, things are accessible to folks financially. She said Head of the Hooch is less elite, but just as big and well organized. And that's what I hear. I can't believe it that I have not been to Head of the Hooch yet, but it's definitely on my schedule for this year. I think that's going to be my big one as a vendor, since I'm not going to nationals this year. I think it's going to be Head of the Hooch this year.
Yeah. So speaking of nationals, has there been any update about the boycott? Do you know?
Okay, so I have to admit, the last few days I've been a little bit out of it because I let myself go on vacation and not think about things for a few days. But the last I heard through DC Strokes, which is leading this boycott against U.S. Rowing Masters Nationals because of it being hosted in Florida. They are still putting pressure on U.S. Rowing to think about the decisions that they made. U.S. Rowing has responded quite a bit. If you've been paying attention or following U.S. Rowing in the last couple of weeks, they have responded and put out a couple of statements. They have also put out a vendors and venue informational statement, which everybody should check out. But the big thing that DC Strokes is calling for is for US Rowing to basically step away from hosting any events in Florida until Florida backs away from their, quote unquote, gay, don't say gay legislation. I think that's a very tough ask. I support DC Strokes both as a member and a coach, and I'm behind them all the way on this boycott. But I think it's a huge ask that realistically, I don't think U.S. Rowing is, they're not about to walk away from Florida at this point. Nonetheless, next year when they're planning on a host, they've got nationals hosted in Sarasota again next year. So I think that's where things stand right now.
I just think it's a double standard, though. You can't come out and have this big, like, we believe in inclusion, you can't just you can't step out of the normal NGO box like that, right? They went out of their way to say that they support LGBTQIA. They went out of their way to say that. They didn't just include it in some gender non-discrimination policy or some discrimination policy on their website and never really bring any attention to it. They've shown a big spotlight on it, and then they choose a state, right? So I know that's one argument, right? And they're looking at a lot of factors that that Amanda Krause actually listed out of why they chose that state or why they chose that venue. I think they're not looking at it as the state. They're looking at it as this bubble. And we talked about this before, where the bubble of a regatta is a really precious little space, right? It does not free of discrimination. It's not free of bigotry and all those kinds of things, but it's kind of a bubble. And, they can do the best they can to create a safe bubble, which I applaud them for trying to do. But you don't make a big stink about it and then go to like the least accepting state, in the nation, the one that's on the map as the least accepting or the worst policy making against LGBTQIA.
So I've heard and seen and read, all sorts of commentary on the boycott, and the two biggest things that people say about why they're not going to support it, or even more, like why they think the boycott is ridiculous. Like there's been some pretty not so nice things said about it. But one thing is people say a whole lot is, leave politics out of the sport. The other is coming from folks saying, well, isn't it better for LGBTQ rowers to show their faces in Florida and make the statement by being there?
I'm not going to put my face out in there. I mean, that's a big ask. There's a conversation. I know this is kind of off topic, but there's a conversation among the LGBTQIA population of like how a lot of people in that population, how we have scattered to the coastal states, right? So you've left middle America, right? You've gone to San Francisco, Seattle, New York, DC, you've kind of gone out to these more liberal sort of locations, right? And so we've left the middle. And there's this concept of why don't we go back to our hometowns? But that's a big ask of people. And not everybody wants to wear their gayness on their sleeve, and not everybody wants to put themselves out there like that. So it's not fair to ask people to be missionaries, essentially, for the cause. But I'm sure there are people who would. I mean, I've done it inadvertently, been like, sorry.
So things are, I think the things that are going to happen with U.S. rowing in terms of this boycott have basically happened. But I know that DC Strokes is still on top of it. I know that they're still in communication with U.S. rowing. One little plug, if I can make it, is that a couple of weeks ago on social media, someone responded to DC Strokes leading this boycott and said something about DC Strokes and their supporters being misinformed radical activists. And DC Strokes now is flipped that script, and we are going to be selling T-shirts that say Ms. Informed Radical Activists. And there seems to be some excitement about those T-shirts, so stay tuned to DC Strokes Rowing Club socials for that if you want to support that club and their mission. And I'm pretty excited about those T-shirts.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll take one for sure. We want to just tell everybody that Steady State Podcast is sponsored by Concept 2, your favorite rowing machine and ours, and other equipment and other things. And Lake Washington Rowing Club came on board via their board president, Casey Dietz, to be a supporter of the podcast. So thanks to those two entities. Katie Brennan says, yes, T-shirt.
Yes, to T-shirts. Awesome. Well, stay tuned, Katie. We'll get you one.
Great.
So again, thank you to Concept 2 and Lake Washington Rowing Club. And as always, our patron sponsors. You guys are amazing. If you are interested in helping out Tara and I and the work that we do here, always visit our website, steadystatenetwork.com/Patreon, or just check out the website and poke around. We have an archive of 3 seasons worth of podcasts at this point. So if you haven't listened to them, or many of them, or all of them, we hope you'll take a listen. Poke around. There's definitely going to be something there for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, you can't really see it, but there's an awesome lake right there, and I'm gonna take a little dip in there today. I'm very excited.
Get in there. Hope you have a great vacation.
Thank you, and I will talk to you in a few days. Everybody have a great weekend, a great week, and we'll see you back here for Coffee Chat next Friday.
Yeah. See ya.
Cheers.